I mostly watch videos on YouTube and do recordings like this, and I think it helps me a lot. Which reminds me, actually, one of the things that I learned when learning Mandarin in particular is the importance of listening. I think listening is even more important than reading in Mandarin. It could be an impression I have because my level isn't too high yet, but currently I think listening is so much more important than reading. Why do I say that? Because I pick up words from people who talk in Mandarin, and then I remember how to pronounce the words that way. And then because I know how to pronounce them, I'd be curious to know what they look like. What the words look like when you write them down. So the idea that you have sounds that you want to put into some form of writing. And it's interesting because some of the writings actually they'd say that there's an explanation to every Chinese character, right? And I remember saying that as well. But sometimes the Chinese characters are just like that. You may come up with some kind of explanation why they became like that. And yes, you can do that. But sometimes I find that there are Chinese characters that they just made it like that. And it's more important to know the pronunciation, the sound. There's a sound, and they wanted to turn it into a Chinese character so that people would know that that sound is this. And I think that's a very curious observation when we deal with learning the language, learning Mandarin, especially when we want to know how to communicate, to talk to people, to speak the language out loud instead of writing and reading text. I'm really, maybe you could say, uh, quite against the part about reading and writing, although I know they are important because if you look at the classic Chinese literature, they are very difficult to read. You know why? Because people don't speak like that anymore. So it's like Latin, I think. People don't speak Latin. They speak a kind of Latin like Italian or French or Spanish. So if you look at the classic literature, the ones that haven't been converted into contemporary form, you'd find that if you want to speak like that, maybe you'd go to some kind of opera or something like that. But in normal everyday conversation, you'd not talk like that. Now, in contemporary Chinese Mandarin. But they're all important definitely because they're part of history, they're part of literature. So the idea that I think based on my current level, listening is much more important than reading because the the texts have a lot of words that I I don't know that I cannot recognize very easily and I need to look up. So many words, even though for most cases you can just use the same word to say stuff, right? Like for example, to do. You just use do for most things. Most and in most cases it's okay already to use the word do for many things. But there are so many variations to the word. You can use what else? What can we use for that word? For instance, you can say to produce, right? So instead of to make or to do, you say to produce. Now that's another word. So that's why when we go into something more specialized, you have to know more and more words. And I know that, well, you know how to say the word in English. You say produce, you don't say do. And why is it that it's so much harder in Mandarin, right? You know produce, you don't say do. Like, for example, will produce a movie. You don't say I'll do a movie, I'll make a movie. You'll say you'll produce a movie, but all of them are also okay, right? Supposedly. So I think it really is because people began to write. when you when you write stuff and you always use do, we'll do a movie, and you see do everywhere. I think it becomes harder to read eventually. So they came up with, okay, so let's use another word, produce. We'll produce a movie instead of using the word do for everything. So it's really when people began to write and not when it's only maybe a couple of guys whom you're talking to, maybe your friends, whom you want to convey whatever it is that you want to say. And it's okay, it's faster. But when you got more and more people reading whatever it is that you want to tell them, because writing is supposed to be the medium to get a lot of people to listen, to know about what you want to convey. Because if you have to always talk to them, eventually you won't get heard. You need the microphone, but even then, even if you have a microphone, many people won't necessarily be able to hear you, especially during the time when we didn't have YouTube, when we didn't have something like YouTube. So people decided that we'll write these things down so that other people who may want to know what we are talking about could read whatever it is that we're talking about. And that's why eventually people began to develop more vocabulary to to say what they want to say, to specify what they want to say, and also to reduce the amount of words that they keep on using. Because the same word would be used for many things. To do this, to do a movie, to do something. And you keep on using the same word, and it becomes actually difficult to get an idea what it is that you are doing now. So we get more and more words, and when people are using more specific words to explain what they want to say, then supposedly people are able to understand much faster. But again, there's an extreme. People began to specify each and everything that they are thinking about so that it began to be ambiguous. They initially wanted to make things clearer by specifying each of the things that they are talking about, to the point that people began to ask, what exactly are you talking about? Because people began to not get the idea anymore. So that's the extreme. And I think that's something that we learn from German philosophers, German literature, where they try to specify what it is that they talking about. So it's supposed to be clear. And people eventually realize that trying to be so clear ends up just messing things, ends up getting people more confused. So I think the Chinese are very fond of the Germans, I'd say. Although we know that from news, the Chinese probably don't want to be too close to the Germans because you see it from the Deutsche Welle news. I watch the Deutsche Welle news, and it seems that the Germans have taught the Chinese so well that the Chinese want to be independent from the Germans already. And the Germans, some of them, are actually worried that the Chinese are getting much stronger. So, with that regard, the words that you see in Chinese literature, there comes a point when you realize that it's too much. the the literature is interesting, yes, but in everyday conversation, you don't talk like that. You don't use these words anymore, and it's too much. And somehow there are those who want to be, we could say, very. These are the activists, actually, or even the usual common people who want to hide something. They would tend to use certain words to convey something that other people won't know what they are talking about, right? So it began to have that form. So you have certain Chinese characters that are odd, but they're odd because you don't see them, you don't use them actually, but people began to use them so that those who are in the know would know what they're talking about. So if you look at the Chinese characters, some of them would have little words inside. And if you can recognize which little word this person, this author is saying, then you know that he's talking about this. So that began to be a form of defiance, a form of conveying something to people when they also want to hide something in whatever it is that they're talking about. And I think it becomes a problem, especially because you don't want people to know what you're talking about. Only those who are close to you, only those who are your friends, and eventually it destroys the community. It's like you have your own little community, and the rest of people don't understand what you're talking about, and it creates a problem that grows actually. It's a small community within a larger community that becomes some type of rebel group. And it creates problem for the larger community. Okay, I think that should be enough. Thanks for joining me. We'll see each other soon.
thwarted.